UBC, inspiring Uganda.
Good evening and welcome to Behind the Headlines. My name is Timothy Nyangweso. Round one of the showdown between the executive and the legislature seems to have gone in one way about the coffee bill. The coffee bill that has become such a contentious issue that the question is, are we talking about UCDA, coffee, or something else? The discussion is lingering there. It has become so sensitive that it's dividing people by tribe. But also we look at the numbers. 12.5 million people involved in coffee, 1.8 million households involved in coffee, 112 districts, that's 76% of our districts involved in coffee, and the number is still growing. If 6.5 million bags is what we export and make between $900 and $1.1 billion in coffee, why are we talking about UCDA and coffee? But also this conversation is circling around rationalization. Is there something we're missing? What is that missing link that we're all missing that should bring us together? Especially, can there be a hybrid in this rationalization to benefit both the farmers, the players, government, and the law? Can the law be able to suit the players that are there? That's the biggest conversation tonight. You can be part of this conversation on YouTube. Drop your comment there, or the number 0709 60 25 92. That's text and WhatsApp there, or X, hashtag UBC Behind the Headlines. The people in the studio were ready to go. Are you? So let me start on my immediate left. On my immediate left, Professor Sarah Sally, the Dean at the School of Women and Gender Studies at Makerere University, is with us this evening. Good evening, Professor.
Good evening, Timothy, and good evening, our viewers. Happy to be here.
They say he's back. Honorable Omara Paul, representative of the people of Otuke district there, is back, and also a member of the Finance Committee and the Budgeting Committee. Good evening, Honorable, and it's good to have you back.
Thank you very much, Timothy. Good evening, viewers. I'm happy to be back after 3 months.
After 3 months, and we really thank God for your life.
Thank you very much.
Our prayers have been with you, and now that you're back, let's discuss contentious issues. Next to Honorable Omara is Honorable Wilson Kajwenje, who is the representative of the people of Nyamshozi and is here to discuss particularly coffee here. Good evening, sir, and how are you?
Good evening to you, Mr. Nyangweso, and to you, viewers.
The person that makes the narrative on how government moves, the Honorable Minister, Dr. Chris Baryomunsi, Minister of Cabinet in charge of National Guidance and ICT, but also representing the people of Kinkizi, and the member of SEC for the Western region there. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Timothy. Good evening, fellow panelists. We welcome Paul, welcome back, and good evening, viewers. I'm happy to be back on Behind the Headlines this evening.
Thank you very much, sir. We're also waiting on Honorable Mwanga Chivumbi, who is supposed to be joining us here, representing the people of Butambala, and also the chairperson of the Uganda Caucus, especially on the contentious issues around that area there. As soon as he gets in, we'll be jumping into some of the issues that he's addressing in the press conferences he has had. But it's befitting that we start with you, Honorable Minister. Yes. And this bill has been on the floor of Parliament. It was brought in first in May, kicked out by the committee, brought back, brought in April, kicked out by the committee, brought back in May 2024, gazetted, then a writing from the Attorney General to the Minister of Agriculture. Why has this coffee bill become an issue and so contentious?
So, thank you very much, Timothy. Let me quickly give the background to this rationalization policy. Around 2015-16, government carried out an assessment of the public service, and we realized that in the last 20 or 30 years, there are many agencies of government which have been created, and they are operating and running alongside the traditional structure of the ministries. And the team of experts carried out an analysis, and some of the observations were, for instance, that they were spending more money on salaries in the agencies compared to the ministries. And it is public knowledge, for instance, that our officers who work in agencies earn much higher than those who work in the mainstream ministries. One funny story one time was a driver of the ED of KCCA was earning 7 million shillings, and medical doctors were earning 1 million shillings. And doctors were up in arms that they would want to go and drive in KCCA. You would find, like in UNRA, an engineer, well qualified, earns probably 15 to 20 million, and an engineer in the Ministry of Works who have gone the same university, they have the same qualifications, probably the same work, earns maybe 1.5 to 2 million. So there was that asymmetry in terms of payment. And so we're like running two parallel civil services, one of the ministries, then the agencies. Now this report was tabled in cabinet in 2018, and we began a discussion and examined these findings, and we scrutinized and assessed agency by agency, and we came up with a decision in the following way. There are agencies which generate money and have a strong regulatory function, so we decided to leave them the way they are. Take an example of UCC, the Uganda Communications Commission. It regulates the communications sector, but also collects non-tax revenue. That's why it remains alone. So there's a category of agencies we left the way they are. Then there was a category of agencies where we saw that their mandates were related. Give an example: National Planning Authority and the Population Secretariat and the National Physical Planning Committee. They all carry out the function of planning. We said these can be merged into one unit. Agencies like NIRA and URSB, they all do registration of sorts. We said we can merge them. We looked at an agency like the Human Rights Commission and the Equal Opportunities Commission. Although for them they require constitutional amendment, but we said basically they are talking about issues of human rights and justice. They can be combined without losing their mandates, and they are able to do that work. So there's a category of agencies, we said these could be merged into one. Then the third category of agencies, we said these could still carry out their mandates by taking them into their mother ministries. That's where agencies like UCDA, agencies like UNRA, NITAU, and others fail. So there were those three broad bands of decisions. Now, a number of them we realized were a creation of statute, of acts of parliament. So for us, for instance, to take back these agencies into their mother ministries or to merge them, you're required to either amend or repeal the laws which create them. And that's how UCDA, for instance, comes into the picture. So we've been debating this issue in the cabinet since 2018 until when we concluded the work, came to parliament, and a number of bills have already been passed. There were those which were recalled by executive and others not approved by parliament, and we took into consideration the issues raised by parliament. For instance, for a number of bills, the certificates of financial implications were not properly prepared. So when we went back as executive, we now put things together to respond to what parliament had raised and brought back some of these bills, like UCDA, the coffee bill, like the NITAU bill, and the others. So that is the context why we took this position of rationalization. And we are saying we rationalize these agencies, but one, no agency will lose its mandate. The functions played by these agencies will remain, whether we have merged them or we have taken them back to the ministries. And we're also trying to cut the costs. We announced earlier on, the president particularly, it was very clear that if we complete this rationalization process, we shall save up to 1 trillion Uganda shillings, which we can plow back into service delivery, and then we provide better services to Ugandans. Now, there has been a lot of confusion rotating around UCDA. You have said, why particularly has UCDA raised the storm, if I can call it? Well, like the English say, it's a storm in a teacup. Maybe this time around, a storm in a coffee cup like this one, which will subside. And there is a lot of confusion which has been created out there in the public. I got a call from my constituent in Kanungu, because we also grow coffee, and he was concerned. He was saying, what do I remember? This policy you are bringing, really does it work? I said, what's the issue? That you are telling us as coffee farmers to uproot coffee, to abandon the coffee growing, and it's only the government which will be growing coffee. I was saying, where have you got this one from? This is what I have heard from radio. So you can see, because of the confusion in the way information is coming out, people are getting confused. And we are here to clarify that what we are doing is administrative rearrangement of government departments. And for UCDA, we are proposing that it goes back into the mother ministry. We have clarified that this rationalization is not a retrenchment exercise. All workers in these agencies who are affected shall be absorbed first in their mother ministries, but where they do not fit in the mother ministry, we shall look at the wider government system, including local governments, and place them in the government. In the case there are some few who may not fit into the civil service, then we shall give them a severance package and the benefits, but also if a vacancy exists in the government, they would have priority to occupy it. Like in the case, we are saying the technical people who have been running UCDA will now sit in the ministry as a department, because what cabinet required us as ministers were to look at the organogram and the structure of the ministries and prepare how to absorb the staff from these agencies. So like in the Ministry of Agriculture, a department has been created that will absorb especially the technical people from UCDA. And then probably where we have to place the officers in different departments, what we call the common cadre officers, because you'll find there is a human resource department in UCDA, there is accounts and finance in UCDA, there is a procurement unit, but in the ministry, those units also exist. And that's where we spend money in administration. So we shall absorb these officers across government, but then the procurement for coffee business or the finance and administration will be handled by the structure which is within the ministry. But we shall maintain the technical people. So the fears that these inspectors of coffee in the field, where are they going? We are not retrenching them. We are not sending them away. They will still be there, only that now they will be under the ministry. I asked yesterday at a press briefing that Dr. Emmanuel Yamule, the ED, sits here on Ginger Road, where UCDA is. We are saying he will now be sitting in Entebbe. So how is the farmer in Kanungu affected by that? Today, if the president said, Dr. Chris Bariomus, the Minister of ICT, I am putting your ministry under Prime Minister's office. And I'll say, you leave Parliament Avenue, you will sit in the Prime Minister's building. How will your phone be affected, how you communicate? Because we're in charge of phones. Will you have trouble with the way you communicate on the phone? No. So I think there is an element of distorting information. Of course, some of our colleagues in the Parliament have jumped on it to politic, maybe because they know there are many coffee farmers out there they think they can ride on this for politics. But we are not in
Honorable Minister,
yes.
before we get into that part,
Yes.
you mentioned, and some of the objectives you talk about in rationalization are reducing expenditure, removing duplication
Yes.
in roles there, but also when we look at the structural adjustment that this government brought in 1987, you were cutting red tape. It was also to create efficiencies, but also it was pressure from IMF and World Bank. Have those objectives been achieved that you're now rationalizing?
Absolutely. Like I said, we carried out a study, and this decision is informed by the findings of these studies, that we believe now that you can create a unit or a department in the Ministry of Agriculture to run and superintend over the coffee subsector and still deliver results or even do it better. Because in any case, if we save resources, then we shall plow these resources into the sector and even be able to perform much better than the way the agencies are doing. We are not being reckless.
No, no.
We know what we are doing because
and
this issue has been studied, and there should be no cause for worry out there, our
And
coffee
that's
farmers.
the clarity we are trying to get today.
Yes, and the clarification we have been making that we are not rationalizing coffee. We are rationalizing an agency, UCDA.
And we're coming to that.
Yes.
Honorable Minister, you talked about UCC, you talked about bodies like National Water, UNRA.
Yes.
You talked about URA, and you talked about salaries, you talked about especially UCC that does non-tax revenue. UCDA, what it receives from government and what it remits is twice the amount. So really help us rationalize the concept of why you are rationalizing a body that is giving you more money than what you're giving it in terms of administration. If we give an example, 44 billion is given to it. It gives 84 billion to government in remittances.
Yes, there is that levy code says that was put in place, and it is sent to a consolidated fund. Are we going to lose it? The answer is no. It is no. This is money which is paid by exporters and it goes to the government coffers. So whether you rationalize UCD or not, you won't lose that money.
My last question to you before I come to Honorable Wilson. How are the ones that you have rationalized performing right now?
Well, we have just started the process.
Let's talk about REA, Rural Electrification Agency.
Well, Rural Electrification Agency was a unit. It had not been created by a statute or act of parliament. It was under the Ministry of Energy, and then the staff were absorbed in the Ministry of Energy, and the ministry is running. Yesterday I asked that in your house, has the electricity which you receive in your house reduced because the REA was taken back to the ministry? Are you getting less power in your house?
Has the coverage of power increased or decreased?
It is increasing. It is increasing. And the Ministry of Energy is functioning. It is functioning. I can tell you, do I give you the sub-counties which have been switched on since REA went in Kanungu? There are many. Chinaba sub-county, Rutenga sub-county, Mpungu sub-county, they are now on. So,
let me come to Wilson, Honorable Wilson Kajrenja. Honorable, this coffee bill, why is it having a standoff in Parliament?
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Nyangweso. First, I think, and I appreciate the minister's communication, and the background is very good. Let's understand it this way. When a government is voted to power, it's given an inalienable mandate to plan for service delivery of the people who elected. Along the way, it's a responsibility of that government to review the plans, however good they are. In fact, in military science, they say, no plan, however meticulously done, survives the first attack. So once a government has come up with a plan, and through studies and reviews, and government decides to review the plan, like this rationalization, that seeks to eliminate wastage, to eliminate double mandate, to eliminate, to combine common services, to save some money and invest them in productive ventures that have a higher return on investment for the economy. Why would anybody doubt that? Two, it is also a known fact that coffee has been growing. Coffee growing, the productivity has gone up. And the government is not rationalizing coffee. No, they are only rationalizing the agency. Two, along the way, UCDA has created super professionals. And that's a fact. It's a known. They are not sending them home. They shall retain them. So the mandate is not being rationalized. Productivity is not being rationalized. What, however, is being rationalized are the pay disparities, are the double mandates, are the common user services. And once you have eliminated that wastage, then the government. And the overall intention of rationalization or RAPEX is to create a lean and productive administration. That is what every other Ugandan desires, including my brother Mwanga Chivumbi. So UCDA, the way I understand it, what is also a known is that coffee growing has exponentially gone up. Regions that traditionally never used to grow coffee, like northern Uganda, or more further west, they are coffee growing regions. So coffee as a crop, we are all stakeholders. So nobody wants coffee to die. Certainly not the government of NRM, certainly not under the leadership of President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. It's only under this leadership that we have seen coffee exponentially, productivity exponentially grow up, including other crops certainly. But our discussion tonight is centered on coffee. So government is not rationalizing coffee. They are only streamlining services. They are only cutting costs. They are only eliminating wastage. They are only combining common user services to make a saving and invest in more productive ventures that have a higher return on investment. Otherwise, coffee grows up. Why? The question is, why then is it a point of debate? Well, first, I think there has been a misconception, misinformation, disinformation, or pure lack of understanding, or for those who have understood it, try to pin it for political reasons. I do not know. I am a coffee farmer myself. I have been promoting coffee growing in Nyabushozi. We have listened to the advice of President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni to grow coffee, and we are growing it. We are not deterred by this, surely. And I'm not trying to discount on the role of UCDA, not at all. But you should also know that our economy is largely liberal, and a farmer in Otuke can grow coffee, process it, and export it. And so for me, I think we are distorting the national debate. Why do I think so, Timothy and honorable colleagues? The debate for a coffee farmer today in Uganda would be, in my view, strong-held view, why are we not getting what the Germans get from our coffee? Value addition. That should be the debate. The debate should be a local farmer in Kenshunga, in Nyabushozi, selling green beans. We are excited about 16,000 shillings. All of us, the leaders, the politicians, the policymakers, and we should be pushing government that we should be getting what the Germans are getting, $45 billion, when they are not growing any coffee tree. That's, for me, that should be the debate. Is UCDA doing that? No. We should be tasking Baryomunsi and the government to make sure we head there.
Has UCDA done any good?
Absolutely. Why not? They have regulated,
So if we
Yes, and not only UCDA, other agencies have done good. Thank you so much. But that's why they were put in place. But the good they have done, if now the policy is to the effect that while doing good, there has been some wastage, there has been some lethargy, there has been duplication of mandate, let's now reorg. Let's now rationalize, remove disparities in pay, remove irrationalities, and move forward as a lean government to deliver the services to the common person, the wananchi. Why should there be a hula balloon?
Honorable, isn't it hypocritical that even the document that the Honorable Minister has spoken about, 2015, 2018, showed up in cabinet, that it's only looking at departments and agencies? Why not look at government as a wide picture in rationalization?
Thank you. Mr. Nyangweso, the concept of known knowns and the unknown unknowns, probably, we need to educate ourselves. Probably that's where government is heading. You never know. That's what we know, we know.
Honorable.
Yes,
That's
I agree with
piecemeal.
you. I think the intention, when I looked at the constitutive document for RAPEX, and I got convinced from the word go, was that I could see that the government of NLM was heading towards a lean administration. In fact, RAPEX, for your information, is not about government agencies only, it's also about public expenditure. RAPEX in full is rationalization of government agencies and public expenditure. So I entirely agree with you. We need to rationalize our public expenditure. We need to move from a consumerism to productivity. And if we continue scattering the resources that we do not have, if we continue scattering the effort that we need to consolidate, we are not doing good. So if government comes up with an idea that we are rationalizing this, we want a lean government, we want a mandate that can, and for goodness sake, Timothy, what's wrong with Ministry of Agriculture?
And
it has professionals.
We shall come to that a little bit later.
Because,
allow me come to Honorable Omara.
Okay.
Honorable Omara, I looked at the economic digest produced by UDB. It showed that there were two reasons why the dollar was stable. One was the CRB given by the Bank of Uganda, and two was the increment in coffee. But it also showed that our imports were still higher than our exports. Why is this conversation about the national bill of coffee not economic but political?
Such a very interesting question. Timothy, there is no doubt or question at all about the strategic significance of coffee and its roles in our national economy. And as you've indicated already, quite a vast number of our population, indicated as 12 million, are involved in coffee growing. And many districts are involved. For us in northern Uganda, we are now more interested in coffee growing than ever before. I think it was because of the colonial setting where we were given cotton, and not very many years ago we embarked on oil seeds, but we realized actually the money is actually in the coffee. So where you have a vast percentage of your population involved in a particular crop, and then there is disinformation or miscommunication or misunderstanding of government policy on that particular commodity, there is a sense in which politics or some form of discontent might arise. But as I think has been quite clearly elaborated by the Honorable Minister and my colleague here from Nyabusozi, I think the question we should be asking, which have also been answered in the main, is how did we get here? how did we get on this particular point where the rationalization of UCDA seems to be scattering some feathers. Timothy and viewers, we should first of all agree, as Honorable Kazoenga has indicated, when you are elected into power as government, you are elected on certain manifesto frameworks on which you have to deliver. And when you are a government, you look at your policies, you look at the structure of government. As we have already been told, government looked at its own structure and discovered that most of these agencies had parallel structures to the main ministries, up to some of them up to the district level, you know, coming from center, regional presence, and then district presence, parallel to the normal main ministry. Secondly, some of them were being funded more than the line ministries themselves. So they had become fat cats in their own selves. And when you begin to look and you ask the question, are they creating any value? Are they bringing in new value? Are they productive? So those questions were asked, and we were able to look at them. I pick an example. If you pick UNRWA, for example, UNRWA would receive substantial amount of money in billions, in trillions actually. What do? They basically do procurement. What happens is that the engineers that were previously in Ministry of Works did interview and crossed over, getting 20 million, 30 million, 40 million shillings, while the ones that remain in the ministry getting 1.5, 2 million, 3 million. So the salary disparities became enormous. So they went and created structures there, HR structure, procurement. They became another parallel government in themselves. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Works had the same structure. And the same thing with the road fund, same thing with the UCDA, with the NADS. So government looked at them and started classifying the way the minister ably explained. And each one of them comes with a board, with an executive director, with directors, with a board, and they became fat cats. So government were the ones, actually the government was the one funding all those agencies. So government started looking, which ones are money creators? Those ones, as the minister said, they were left, okay, continue to create money, make more money. Those who are there just doing procurement and in the middle said, I think it's time for you to be rationalized, to be mainstreamed into the main ministries. So we need to look at the bigger picture, that this is about reorganization of the entire government structure for service delivery. It is not something about UCDA as an entity. UCDA is just one of them, one of those. And what does the rationalization seeks to do? To eliminate basically waste, eliminate duplication. My brother here, we are together he's left in the budget committee. He's now a big man, helping us with looking at the audit matters. If we try to now, when we look at, we listen to ministries, you find that ministers come with unfunded priorities, very important. So government is looking and saying, we have very scarce resources. How best can we use these scarce resources for productive ventures to create wealth? And you know that government does not make money. Government just receives money from private sector and spends. So government does not create money. So government, therefore, the policy of government should then be about how can we as government become a good enabler. Being a good enabler, it means we need to provide social services to the private sector. We need to make sure we have good roads where private sector can take their goods and services into the market. As government, we need to make sure there are schools where people can be skilled, and those skills will be required by private sector to create production. As government, we need to make sure that health services, where if these guys who are working fall sick, they can go and get treated. So government becomes an enabler. But if government itself becomes a fat cat and begins to spend money on itself, then where are we going to get money from to provide the services that we need? For the hospitals, for the roads, you look at Kampala roads are shambolic, many of our roads are not good. So the private sector is struggling, lorries are falling off the road. So the rationalization basically is to save money, cut waste, cut all this unnecessary expenditure, have a much more nimble and smaller government. And all of us, me and my brother, Honorable Shivumi, we agree. Personally, I'm an advocate of a smaller government. And therefore...
Honorable, let me come back to some things you have said.
Yeah.
One of the things for the structural adjustment was efficiency.
Yeah.
The other one was red tape.
Yeah.
IMF, World Bank, let's use an example of UNRWA. To put money there to get specialists and expertise to come in there to ensure that there is efficiency and services are delivered.
Yeah.
When you look at that, and you have spoken of agencies that are consumptive.
Yes.
But UCDA is not one of those that is consumptive. Does it make economic sense?
The money you're talking about from UCDA, the money which they call cess money, it was a charge on export. It's just like collecting some revenue or some fees. And we know that the institution in Uganda which is created to collect those fees and taxes is Uganda Revenue Authority. So what UCDA was doing was a Uganda Revenue Authority job. We have actually been out of the country. There is a country called Uganda Property Holdings that is also collecting some revenue. Now, we are beginning to look at that and we said most of this money should not be, then we begin to say we are self-funding, but that is government money. Self-funding, Namaragane. We should be looking at you and we'll say, okay, what structure do you have? What are your needs? What are your deliverables? And we plan for you. We give you the money. Or you become a subvention. But you can't say now we are an entity, we are on our own, we are going to collect the money we want, and then we are self-funding. That is the public money. It's not their money. So what we are saying is that that money, even if UCDA goes tomorrow, that money will continue to go to the consolidated fund and can be collected by URA. Even now, by the way, fees, the charges that are paid, URA, even school fees, URA is beginning to look at literally everything. They are building capacity where they can see and collect revenue. So there should be no exception where an entity in Uganda would say we are self-funding. No, it is public money, and we must make sure that URA is mainstream to deal with some of those revenue. Let me say this. What the government is doing with RAPEX is, I think, a beginning of the government outlook in basically downsizing itself. It's actually a public sector reform. It might lead to a public sector reform where we should be looking at the size of parliament. Do we really need to have the 557 MPs that we have? That's a question we must ask honestly. Do we really need the number of districts we have in Uganda? We have a cabinet of 81. Do we really need all those members of cabinet? I am personally prepared a proposed bill on vehicle, public vehicles scheme program, where we can cut down on the cost of use of public vehicles. So I think this is going to open an avenue where we must be honest with ourselves and say there has been a lot of wastage by duplication, by creating very many agencies that we must deal with. And then we again begin to look at other government expenditure areas where we can streamline and release money. Let me emphasize this thing. Government has very limited resources, but government has a responsibility to create enabling environment for private sector to perform. It is the private sector that gives us money, that provides services, and they are taxed, and the government gets that money. So government does not create money.
Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us, Honorable Mwanga Chivumbi, and thank you for coming in. even if it was a bit late. But let's get to the gist of the conversation. One, I saw you up in arms. Two, I saw your press conference. Why are you up in arms with this coffee bill? Is it coffee? Is it UCDA? Or there is something else we're missing?
First of all, let me start on the note. It is disrespect for people who have a different opinion to characterize it as disinformation. Because they can counter you and say you're also on propaganda. It's at most, I find it in our language non-parliamentary. To hold a different opinion is not disinformation. And I find it, because once you say disinformation, you are criminalizing people who have a different opinion from you. That's a page from Hitler. And in a liberal free society, expression of, even if I'm wrong, is my opinion.
It's your right to be wrong.
It's my right to be wrong, and it's your right to be. So this test I've seen, a red tape in all my previous, and in a Minister for National Guidance and Information, should be, because it's the ideologue of the national values we cherish, is really despicable, and I condemn it.
Deviation from the national guidance?
No. Even if it's a deviation, as long as it's articulated publicly, it's not disinformation. I first want to test that and to really do his role as a senior. Now, have we come here to discuss the merits of rationalization or no rationalization? I believe not today. You informed me to come here specifically address questions to do with coffee. I'm a bishop and a high priest in the school of downsizing, efficiency, and lean government. Even in Parliament, when in the last, by the way, these bills have been brought back to Parliament. Even in the last session, I remember there are so many agencies where I defied with majority opinion then, who didn't say we don't rationalize. You remember my debate on NFA and other agencies. I actually, as the shadow minister, came up with the first document that looked at the budget. It was at the tail end of last term that came up with a 5 trillion saving that we can have in the budget. Therefore, we hold that opinion. Then I was here with Omara. And me, I love people who are consistent in life. With Omara, and I think she was here.
Yes.
When we were talking about rationalization in general. He put up a very good case for non-rationalization of UNRWA. Today I hear him. No. We can roll back. Today I hear him with a very different opinion. But he's entitled
to his opinion.
He's as a human, even to change.
You can roll back.
His opinion is entitled. But I love people in life that are consistent in the argument. No, now let me go specifically coffee. I missed a small bit of the minister's presentation. But I think government is not rationalizing everything. That's also, he started on the notion of the known. Okay? Government is not having an omnibus, all out, across the board rationalization. And no modern societies run that way. We must also know that Omara talks about corporate governance, but also efficient running of government. there are other things that are done through agency model all over the world. Now the question at hand is coffee. You have national oil. Are you going to run the business of national oil through a main ministry of energy? Other countries specifically create a ministry and call it petroleum, specifically with an eagle eye that focuses on petroleum. Therefore, you cannot rationalize the National Oil Authority and UNOC if you are to be in a global business of oil. Now, what are the best practices of the business called coffee? What do other countries that, because we are not the only country that grow coffee and market coffee. What do other countries that grow coffee do? None is doing it through a main ministry. And I would like anyone here to tell me a country that seriously is into the global coffee business and is not doing it through a specialized purpose vehicle or an agency as a standalone and autonomous. Even then, so we've listed, these are in the report, we've listed all other countries, Brazil, Honduras, Colombia, Ethiopia, all of them. Now, our neighbors here tried to be wise. Kenya and Ethiopia.
Yes.
Did a gamble on coffee. Said, oh, with all these smart arguments, and streamlined it in the main government ministry. 3 years down the road, they burnt their fingers and realized that's not the way to go. And they rolled back to the agency model. Now, why coffee? Not other crops. Is that even today, self speaks to itself. First of all, it's no longer a regional crop. It's a national crop grown across the country. And there is also a newfound love with coffee, okay, across non-traditional coffee growing areas.
Correct.
And coffee is all over. Therefore, the country has a specific economic niche. In the old school, we used to call it comparative advantage of where coffee is being grown. Therefore, if it is your flagship agricultural product, how do you handle it? And the economics are looking good. Okay? You are increasing the bags, and you are increasing the quantity, and you are getting more revenue as a country. 1.4 billion US dollars. And last year, people can put and say it's because of the economic crisis in Brazil, and we've heard that. But as the world grows more of a middle class, globally, they are falling into love with taking coffee. Is the middle class growing? Is the population of the world growing? So even without economic hardships, when we planned when the country laid out the 20 million bags of coffee target by 2030, they were not dependent on special prices. And what will the country earn? Approximately 3 billion US dollars. Now, you have a whole hullabaloo about oil. In Uganda, putting up a special airport, oil city. What is the country going to earn from national oil? At a 50 barrel, by the time we signed the agreement, at $50 per barrel, okay, for across over 25 years, we had been projected to earn 22 billion. That is dollars. That's the actual national, the other benefits. As coffee has other benefits, by the way, in fertilizers, in the energy mix because of firewood, you are cutting forests. By the way, a lot of the coffee have pruning, provides critical energy, firewood for farmers, and it's environmental, is critical in climate change. Now, I don't want to go there. So, but the whole harbor about national oil, even if now the barrel of dollar is at 100, you would double that and say it is 44 billion over the course of 25 years. Now, with 3 billion earnings and attainable, now we have demonstrated, with the accent of coffee in the country moving. Actually, the coffee that has been planted in the last 3-4 years is not what we are now harvesting. So most likely we are going to either triple or double the coffee quantity output. Therefore, the focus of the country, now that you have quantity, specifically moves to quality. Because world prices are not necessarily determined by the volumes of products. It's by the quality of the products you do. And this is where UCDA comes into play. UCDA does not own farms, does not own even nursery beds.
No.
Okay, it's a known. So what is UCDA about on the value chain is quality assurance.
Which they can do within the ministry.
Please.
Let's come to
Let
that
me make my
let him
case.
finish submitting.
It's about quality assurance. Now, a known government bureaucrat that we know, he talks about known knowns. You get it? It is also now a known that the Ministry of Agriculture is one of the most inefficient ministries. It doesn't score any plus on any endeavor. Actually, it's a minus. I've just audited it. He said I've just audited it from tractors to whatever. By the way, I know his performance. I can tell you he does well here, he does well here. The Minister of Agriculture was condemned on the floor of Parliament when we issued a report. But it has been adopted. We have sent even some officers there for CID investigations. Okay? And it's one, by the way, under the Ministry of Agriculture, is one of the agencies that received the highest level of donor project funding. Unknown to so many people. A lot of Ministry of Agriculture receives a lot of, its budget is about 900 billion. His is about, he has no money. He's only having money for pensioners. Minus pension, he has about 30-something billion. Very broke fellow. The Ministry of Agriculture, so the Ministry of Agriculture, our national funding is about 190 billion, but its budget is nearly $1 trillion because of project. But no, now I've revealed the projects of the Ministry of Agriculture. 10 years. UCDA. No, for first wait. So it's just 48 billion. It's not a hell of money. Just 48 billion. So for Ministry of Agriculture, it has now been established and known, even by the President, that it has no capacity as of now to take on the functions that are being done by UCDA. So our first response is that coffee is so critical a crop in the economic mix of Uganda. Don't tamper with it. And it's doing well. Instead, consolidate it. The same argument we had for dairy. It's only the dairy people who said, you guys, we don't need those arguments. But for us, we are only saying, even the same with dairy, that these have potential. And coffee is a finite resource. Is an infinite resource. Okay? These other things are finite. A coffee grown by my grandfather Asumani Chivumbi, 100 years ago, we are harvesting. Now, for a crop of that nature, what will the country lose if it gave it a special purpose vehicle? As you have for oil. I've told you over 25 years, coffee will earn about 75 billion. Far double the amount of money projected to earn from national oil. Here you are putting up people, blah, 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 airports and blah, blah. And this is a pig from the garden. And then understand that coffee is a bottom-up crop. For government to get money, the farmers first get money. For the oil, it's a trickle down. The government will first sort out itself, and that's why you have so many very rich fellows in the Arab world amidst poverty, and that's what the core of terrorism. Terrorism is not about religion, it's about economic disparity. The core of it, an Israeli prophet established that there is no new Quran, but the question is, how are you sharing the resources that you have? With so many people rich, those who are disadvantaged hide under religion and do whatever. So it can even be a security issue to that extension. It becomes a governance and security issue. And therefore, it's a huge political issue. I'm not about to say you cannot think it through the lens of politics. Because the ultimate of economics is politics. Politics is who gets what, when, and how. The ultimate. Now, our case against coffee is that the best practices. Now, UCDA has built this capacity. Now, they're saying government will absorb all the capacity of UCDA. I've looked at the numbers. The head of the coffee, commissioner for coffee, will be the head now of coffee in the Ministry of Agriculture, is a commissioner. Now, if he's not a scientist, he will earn 1.8 million gross salary at the current salary scale. After tax, that will be like 1.5, 1.3. And the head is the commissioner in charge of coffee. Non-scientific workers in UCDA will go as low as 0.5 and 400. Now the argument is that the assumption that all of them are scientists. Therefore, even a commissioner at that level, if he's a scientist, is going to earn 10 million. Now, UCDA, for question, because he knows sometimes in the corporate world, you even pay some more people off the main pay structure because you need their specialty. It happens even in private companies. Those who run hotel business, a chef may earn more money than a manager. It's because he's at the core. So sometimes, as we want to save money, not in all ways, sometimes you need to spend a little more to get real money. So the argument of national, these arguments, I understand with the population council. So therefore, don't equate coffee to cassava, to beans, to maize in the economic mix of Uganda. And therefore, our thinking that we are getting it wrong as a country. Then the notion they have that government set up these things, it has a capacity to destroy them. No. Rationalization, by the way, even Nani was rationalized, rare. The only difference is that rare was not by a statutory instrument. Was not by an act of parliament. It was a statutory, that collapses easily because the minister just evokes that statutory instrument. Those that are before parliament now are those that were by acts of parliament. Okay. Otherwise, others simply could collapse on their own. Two, so government, it's like you having a child. The fact is your own child. You don't have a right to kill it. So this, since I am the father, then at any time I can sort of cut off your head. It doesn't work. I find that argument a little funny. That you see, this is what government did. This is what government. No, government of the day. Government of the day. You take on assets and liabilities. Even if I become a president of Uganda today, okay, or any other, there are things I can't easily reverse.
But I have a right to
Because-
take the child from a boarding school to a day school.
No, sir.
Honorable,
But you have no right to carry. Therefore, I've found.
Please conclude.
As I conclude my argument, is that this is the total of a crop, and already one for on road. So please save it. And for us, we are saying, Mr. President, government of Uganda, drop the ego.
Okay.
It's no longer. It's not too late for us to reverse. Actually, we haven't passed it. Please abandon this whole thing. It doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense. It's how your arguments are not anchored on common sense.
Thank you. Professor, let me bring you in. We began from rationalization, and now we've ended up with the crop here. What are we missing in this whole coffee bill? Where is the farmer? Where are the coffee players? That's a two-set question for you, Professor.
Thank you very much, Timothy and colleagues. Indeed, it's a very interesting debate. And you're asking, what are we missing? Of course, there's been a lot of debate and a lot of talk. We've been told out of respect, we don't say information and misinformation. We have received different kinds of information. Those of us who are not in parliament discussing these things, right, I mean, at the core of things. So the other people are really well informed of what has been taking place. But when you come to a member of the public in Uganda, what has been, like you're asking, the stakeholders.
Yes.
Of course, the common question you are going to encounter on the streets is, where has UCDA failed? And do we either fix it or do we rationalize it?
And is it broken?
And is it broken? They are better placed to answer whether it's broken. But when you look at UCDA, okay, the little we read, it was formed to, as he says, quality assure, ensure that all processes within the value chain are well looked after. But one key thing that sticks out is actually there are very multiple stakeholders. If you look at the value chain right from production to the end, to processing and the rest. So that means some of the stakeholders are going to be agricultural, the nursery bed owners, the farmers, the processors, the exporters, the traders. I imagine even the people who run coffee shops in foods and beverages, all of those. Recently we had, I think there was a grant which had been disbursed to teach us to drink coffee. So all those are stakeholders within this. And the question actually people are asking is, so are all these stakeholders under agriculture? Because if the stakeholders are traders, they're exporters, they're not necessarily going to fall under the agriculture kind of ambit. There are levels for agriculture, there are issues for Ministry of Trade, there will be issues, I think, for Ministry of Finance, and very many other things. So we are not missing the stakeholders because the stakeholders are right at the center of UCDA. The mere fact that we are here, we are all stakeholders in this business, although we may not necessarily be agricultural in nature. But I think also there have been other sentiments, and you're asking what is the missing link here. Of course, the arguments made around rationalization are acceptable to all. This debate actually flared in 2002 when people thought actually many of these entities were simply duplicating and weakening the line ministries. And at that time, the president himself said, let's give them a chance and assess, and you'll thank me later that these agencies were allowed. So then the question is, why was it necessary to keep them in 2002 and not necessary to keep them in 2024? But as the colleagues have said, is that they have done new research. They have new evidence now, which shows that some need to go and some do not need to go. But I think what we may be missing is our understanding or the factoring in of the role of coffee in Uganda's history, Uganda's political history, Uganda's cultural history, and Uganda's nationalism. Of course, we all know it was a colonial crop, but we all know that wherever it came, it empowered people because of the nature of the demand of the crop globally, okay? And we all know that the organizations around nationalistic struggles for independence really came from people who had gone for in agriculture, and it was much more coffee than actually it was cotton. And wherever there was coffee, these powerful middle classes grew up, whether you're talking about Buganda, you're talking about Bugiso, you are talking about the Banyankole Kweterana. And of course, over time, right from colonial time, the state has attempted to intervene in the management of this crop. Now, as different states have given different reasons for the intervention in coffee production. And each time the civilians or the coffee producers or the farmers have interpreted state intervention as control of the economy, as economic nationalism, as a way of wanting to impoverish us. Because a lot of state intervention has also come with price controls, okay? That is what the history is. And of course, you come like to the situation of the 1960s when there was a boom and Uganda seemed to be gaining a lot out of coffee. The response was to reduce coffee prices in Uganda by 75 and increase it in Ankole and in Bugisu by 75. So as to stabilize the export on the world market without necessarily leaving not the penalization, but the intervention taken in one tribe to affect production globally. So these suspicions have been on and on and on. Of course, with neoliberalism and state intervention, again, we were given an efficiency and effectiveness argument for formation of these entities like UCDA. But now we are again being given another argument for efficiency and effectiveness, which shows that actually maybe that was a mistake or it has served its time. But I think what we need to factor in, whether it is UCDA or it's another organization called something else tomorrow, managed by someone else, the argument is that people are concerned about is what's going to constitute the rights of the producers in this coffee value chain. What's going to constitute the rights of the other stakeholders? Let's say just generally the stakeholders in this coffee value chain. What will the pricing be? Because already people are saying the disbandment of UCDA into a ministry means the government is going to control prices. Of course, Honorable Yomunsi said that is not true, but that is what is on the streets or out there. So we need, I think as these matters are being discussed, the population will need to be assured on things like price determination. Will it be the market to decide, or will there be a monopoly? So is the disbandment of UCDA making way for the creation of a monopoly? And what kind of monopoly is it going to be? Will it be a monopoly where farmers are cheated at the farm gate for this kind of monopoly to thrive? That is one thing. The other thing is going to speak to support. Of course, there have been different entities that have been supporting people's purchase and growing of these things. But now, what does it mean for those people in this new dispensation? The honorables have told us that actually it does not mean much. Honorable Yumus gave us an example that if his ministry moves to Entebbe, it will not affect how we make calls, okay? But people are concerned that maybe when he moves to Entebbe, probably the calls will become more expensive. I think what the population then needs is assurance. All of these stakeholders is assurance. So we are now debating UCDA. It may be UCDA, it may not be UCDA, but for the common stakeholder on the coffee value chain, what are the issues of concern? Who is going to assure quality when, as he has said, the labor absorbed from UCDA with their big salaries has now been reduced to what we earn as civil servants, okay? Maybe will that be demotivation? Will that mean laying off of the workers? That is one thing. But in terms of providing of farmer inputs, that will be another thing for the producers. Then quality assuring of what goes where. And I think, Timothy, you remember recently we were here and we were debating, maybe last week or 2 weeks ago, maybe last week, we were debating food security. Last week. And one of the things we observed with food security is that everyone is doing everything the way they want because there's no kind of control the way we have been having with UCDA. And as a result, you have a country with the most fertile soils with the 2 seasons throughout the year, but also suffering food insecurity compared to actually other countries on this continent that may not even have a season for production in a year. So we are having that paradox. And the paradox was really attributed to the weakness and the lack of farmer extension of the Ministry of Agriculture. Okay. So now that we are moving what seems to be a well-performing entity into the ministry to save on cost, I think what the population needs is assurance. So how will we save coffee production away from collapsing like the basics have collapsed in terms of food security? I know our NDP talks about and PDM talks about agricultural production, but beyond mantras, it has been really left to whoever it may concern. There's not much support there. And so we are having a crisis of production in other crops, okay? So apart from, I think, this one and a bit of sugarcane, which we've also seen because of the drop of prices, there's a lot of dumping and people are cutting the sugarcane. So what is the fate of coffee? What is the fate of the stakeholders on the coffee value chain with the move of UCDA into the ministry? I think that's what the population needs assurance about. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me read some feedback that has come through. Mr. Nyangweso, thank you for the show. The salary disparities argument is ill-based. I have evidence that extension agents in UCDA and that oversee 2 districts are paid about 2 million shillings, and a similar extension agent in Maif in local government and sub-county level is paid about 3 million. This is Josephine Pidgey. Thank you for that information. Good evening, Timothy and the panelists. We must...
No, can you come again?
Which one?
UCDA earning
Farmer extension.
By extension agents earn about 2 million, the ones that oversee 2 districts, and a similar extension worker in Maif and local government earns about the same 3 million shillings there. This is Josephine Mpiji.
Okay.
Okay.
I think that was after the salary enhancement for scientists.
For scientists.
Yes, I think
for
so.
scientists.
Good evening, Timothy and the panelists. We look back into the unfolding events of NRM in 1986. Privatization emphasized government poor business operations, leading to privatizing entities and collapsing of bureaucratic ministries there. All crops, both food and cash crops, are dead businesses under the Ministry of Agriculture. Tobacco was once a big taxpayer. It is dead. Sugar cane is dead. Sugarcane is in ICU. Tea growing today is in limbo, about to die and be uprooted. The goats that were procured have died in less than a month. Okay, quite a number of things there. Special request to the government to sensitize farmers today. I'm convinced the intention of rationalizing UCDA is really good, in good faith. It should stop the misinformation to farmers and politicking everything. This is Bunia from Moyo. Thank you, Bunia from Moyo. The Ministry of Agriculture should be cleaned up if there are issues. Then if UCDA is to be a department, the ministry should let rationalization have a chance. This is Peter. Thank you very much, Peter. Finally, good evening, UBC. To me, if government does not know the uselessness and high consumpting entities, they need to be looking into. The honorables tell me, why are you failing to look at the numbers of the presidential advisors, RDCs, MPs, ministers? If we have categories that are non-touchables, why do we continue forcing the issue on us? Whether you are correct or not, we say no through our MPs. The reason is that we tried several times and it failed. This is Agaba from Isinjiro. There was a lengthy one that has quite a number of questions, so let me read it. Timothy, thank you for the show. Ask Honorable Mara, Honorable Baryomunsi, and Honorable Chivumbi, what the salary of an extension worker with the first-class degree with arts is in Maif. What does a director earn in UCDA? Ask Honorable Mara, is it true that a Ugandan exporter will not be able to export their coffee if UCDA is removed because of the accreditation? Who is accrediting and what does that mean? How many extension staff does UCDA have in a district? How many does a district have? In case UCDA has collapsed, what happens to the coordinator? Ask Honorable Baryomunsi, the policy that is on non-tax on exports, what does that mean? Is CIS not a tax on export? Ask Honorable Chivumbi, what was the average yield of coffee in Uganda in 1991 and to date? And is it still low? How is this bill addressing that? The second reading allows you to debate the whole bill clause by clause. Why are you rejecting that? Kelly Wanda. When we come back, we look at this strategic crop, specifically what we can do to enable it moving forward.
To be a winner, it requires that you exceed all the limits of mankind and womankind. But when you play with MTN Momo, winning is easy. Simply get your phone, and use the Momo app or dial *165*3#, enter merchant code, enter amount, enter your Momo PIN, and pay. Congratulations! Your stomach is full, and now you stand a chance to win mobile money with MTN Momo.
I'm Dr. Sandy Nixon. I'm the economist of PDM Parliament Model, who sits at the Secretariat, and I'm in charge of pillar number 4, which is social services, and also Ediamfuna, which we call economics. So far, so good. As PDM, we come closer to the people, and that's its purpose, that brings service closer to the communities. Therefore, we made sure we come closer to the people. I myself, we came to know that these people are in need, mostly in Natet parish, because of the various activities they are doing. Therefore, we engaged them, and we had to call also other partners to come in to support, mostly on mindset. Yes, to change their mind from what they are doing to come up and they do what is right, mostly for economic transformation. Briefly about Natet, that the leaders of the parish, both political and the parish development model, are so innovative, and they have that will, what we call patriotic will, to make sure that people move from the subsistence householding to money economy. As you can see, some of them have now started getting income. Some of them have improved by constructing their shelters, only receiving 1 million from parish development model. It is real, and it really works. As we talk of, it is economic social transformation, as well as someone's pocket or income increases, even the lifestyle changes. What he has been eating, where he has been sleeping, it automatically changes. After getting the money, the income increases, then the life changes. They now move to hotels, they move to other sorts of income generating activities. Because we know the most problem for Ugandans is capital, what we call seed capital. So the government, through parish development model, decided to come up and give them seed capital in terms of parish revolving funds. And when it say economic improving, automatically social life also what? Improves. You see them now educating their children, you see them changing now from even hotel management or hotel engagement, or you call it any hotel. You will see them even improving to another level. Some they will start even constructing these hotels. Now they are at higher level, not at low level, which we call Toninyira. But as we move on, as we say, the grace period for this man is 2 years. After 2 years, we expect that they will have moved from even Toninyira to another level. One, for those who have net.
Welcome back from that quick commercial break here on Behind the Headlines. Even off air, the conversation continues. My name is Timothy Nyangweso. I'm joined by Professor Sarah Sari, Dean at the School of Women and Gender Studies at Makerere University, Honorable Mwanga Muhammad Chivumbi, Chairman of the Buganda Caucus and representing the people of Butambala, Honorable Omara Paul, representing the people of Otuke, Honorable Wilson Kajwenje, representing the people of Nyabushozi, and finally, and not least, the Honorable Minister, Cabinet Minister, National Guidance and ICT, Dr. Honorable Chris Baryomunsi, and we're discussing coffee. We've talked about rationalization in that bit, and a lot of messages still coming through. The number is 0709 60 25 92. Text or WhatsApp there. Hashtag UBC Behind the Headlines on our X platform. Let us know what you think. But let me read some messages before I come to the professor, because now I want to focus on the crop itself, because I want to do some comparisons. Honorable Mwanga Chivumbi has literally whitewashed the panel. The professor took a middle ground there. Maybe we leave UCDA alone. This is Charles Odok. Okay? Rationalization must prevail. Tribalism of economics cannot be entertained. Okay? And finally, for this bit, as we come back, thank you for the show. Actually, I would like a lot of state agencies and administrative units. I would prefer UCDA is merged to cut national expenditure. However, there is no honest political will to cut expenditure. President Museveni is keen in the specific merger for suspicion. Why is he arising this suspicion? This is Asimwe Edward from Sanga. Okay, thank you for the messages coming in, and thank you for bringing that there. And there's a lot of mistrust, Honorable. I hope you'll be able to address that. But let me start with Professor here. Professor, you and I were here when Dr. Surma was here, and we talked about UCB, the revival, and he was giving us a plethora of information about the economics, how it had gone under, how we went in there, revived it, but after some bit, some powers that be decided that it should be sold. And he goes on to link it to UCDA and says, you know, these two, we need to think twice before we do that. But the question is, when you look at what Honorable Mwanga Chivumbi has said, when you look at this crop itself as coffee, as strategic as it is, one of the earners in dollars, it has competition with tourism there. This specific crop, maize, sugarcane, all these are suffering. Tobacco, we were here, we once talked about in passing about tea. How can we enable coffee and a coffee farmer that we have an economy that is enabling?
Thank you very much, Timothy. I think one way is maybe what UCDA has been doing, but basically what the government has been doing over time, because when UCDA is a government entity anyway, I think is to look at the value chain. And by the way, I think it has also been stated here before that the success of coffee did not come by accident. This has always come up each time we are here discussing agriculture as a sector, or when we are discussing the NDP. The argument is that what we see as a successful coffee story today is a history of decades of investments in regulation, where they regulate up to the level of where can you dry, which seedlings do you buy, where do you dry your produce to make sure there's no sand in it or there are no stones in it, which you'll find with other crops that are not that heavily regulated. And I think when we were here before, the argument was for other crops to actually reach that level of standard, they will need that kind of regulation to benchmark coffee. And of course, at that time, it was UCDA which was there. So it was the one which was being celebrated as the one which had done that. But we know that even before the formation of UCDA in the 1990s, there was a whole effort of the different coffee agencies that had been there, whether cooperatives or whatever, to ensure there's that. Because where they sell, and Uganda has sold coffee since colonial times, has always demanded that kind of quality. So before structural adjustment, or before the neoliberalism, the traditional crops were coffee, cotton, tea, the rest. Many of the others actually suffered, but coffee has never suffered. So it has continued enjoying this market on the global whatever share in the market, but also that has enabled it to, as he said, you earn better prices internationally, not by quantity, but by quality. So it has pushed this over decades. So you're asking what should be done to make this crop even more profitable. I think where we stand economically, it's one of our low-hanging fruits. It's where we get most of the forex. So it is to continue doing what has been done to make this crop viable or globally competitive. The question, I think, which is on the table this whole week is whether that should be done through UCDA or through Ministry of Agriculture or through something else. His argument was, okay, if it's not UCDA, there should be at least a special purpose vehicle, okay, which he has seen and benchmarked with other countries. And he gave us an example that the other ministries of agriculture, Ethiopia, and which is another big coffee producer, actually we are told the seed came from there, the initial seed, and also Kenya, tried the Ministry of Agriculture, and it didn't work out well. So we need to benchmark and know what are the strengths and weaknesses of Ministry of Agriculture, and they said they have done that. So I think the information is there. What we now need to do is to move beyond the information, to sit down and digest this information and say, what do we implement where? Do we have, if UCDA must go to Ministry of Agriculture, do we have, but of course I think also development planning is against creating parallel streams within the same ministry, because you'll end up like you are still having the same agency but within that. But I think we need, even within that ministry, to have dockets where a lot of attention is being paid to this. When Professor Solomon was here, his argument was really around banking and the danger or the challenges we faced or the consequences we faced by nationalizing the only African bank, okay? Because now banking went into private hands, which means the interest of the private banking sector to invest into the lowest level of economic development is a challenge. And I think today what he's writing is to say why this, he's giving a justification for why the UCDAs were formed in the 1990s. And of course he was writing to a colleague, I don't know even how that WhatsApp message escaped. But anyway, what he's trying to say is if something is working very well like that, and it has grown like that, to have multiple stakeholders and do multiple things and proven that it efficiently works like that than being within a ministry, why you return it? And he also gives an example. For example, would you return Makerere University to a department within the Ministry of Education? Would you take Mulago Hospital to become a department within Ministry of Health? I think the point he's trying to make is that we have tried it and tested it. So for things that have been tried and tested in this way, they should be allowed to grow and to continue being nurtured the way the intentions of the formers of these things were. So I think it is an issue of looking at the policy implications of what we are doing, given the history and given the evidence. So your question is, what do we need to do for stakeholders to keep making this crop vibrant? I think the evidence is there, the information is there. We need to organize this information and simply implement it.
And it seems like we are looking at this elephant and everyone is looking at it from different angles and touching it and saying the tail, the head.
Yes.
What we can't dispute with what Honorable Mwanga Chivumbi has said is the quality that has pushed the demand.
Yes.
What we hear from the side of government is that expenditure is a lot we need to cut.
Yes.
How do we find a hybrid? He has mentioned a special purpose vehicle. How do we find a hybrid that solves that problem but also keeps the crop as a strategic crop?
Yes, actually, they are both right, as you're saying. We don't want multiple lines and differentiation within maybe the government payroll, but he has also given a justification for that. So if UCD is a government entity, Ministry of Agriculture is a government entity, I think we need to be guided by the mission and our intention. Our intention is to have this crop which continues to be very competitive on the global market. But we don't want disparity in incomes, okay? We don't want duplication of roles, because you also find the Ministry of Agriculture actually, maybe in Kampala it's vibrant, but at local level it's really not there, because the crisis we are having in production is because of the limited impact. I think at lower level they are called secretaries for production and that kind of entity. So you wonder what production is there when everything is basic peasantry. But I think we need to see what others have done very well around this crop For example, if it's a special purpose vehicle, we continue with the special purpose vehicle. It may be called UCDA. It may not be called UCDA. It may be reorganized in a way that is very efficient, because of course also this debate also is touching around people's emotions, around people's incomes and people's jobs. That one we cannot ignore. But if we are to reduce the salaries from that big to what is manageable by government, so as to reduce waste, how should the special purpose vehicle be organized? It may not be UCDA, but can it be something that is more affordable for government to run? I know, I don't know very much the experience here, but I know in some entities they come up with government flagships which become like subsidiaries of military installations or whatever, but not very much in Uganda. But I know in some countries like Israel, some of these things do work. So I think we need to think, it cannot be a straightforward answer, but we need to know what are the policy implications of rolling down this special purpose vehicle when we don't have a successor yet. But also, what are the policy implications of putting it in a ministry which has been benchmarked and found to be struggling? And the evidence of that struggle is fairly the limited production you have, the crisis in agricultural production you have in other places. So it may be UCDA, but run in a more cheaper way. It could be another special purpose vehicle, not called UCDA, or it could be a ministry, but given with high performance indicators, key performance indicators, because also you don't want islands of excellence within a sea of inefficiency. So probably it could be also be the opportunity to improve performance of the agriculture sector. But by the time that is improved, coffee production will have suffered.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Honorable Mwanga Chivumbi, I looked at your interview after you had a caucus meeting, and very many ultimatums made there. This coffee plant is a strategic crop for the country. Its quality has improved our revenues. What will play out, especially with the ultimatums you've made, versus the position of government, and you have an impasse?
First of all, I would love to dedicate this show to make a case for coffee. The rest of other issues, we will deal with them. Okay? We have a house, parliament. We will deal with our cocktail there. I think this program, I wouldn't want to take that route. I would want to stick within making a case for UCDA and make a humble appeal. You know, we've gone every length. Because of the nature, by the way, I really had a caucus, but we compared notes with other caucuses from coffee growing areas. And we had a common petition to the Committee of Agriculture. We feel our position is so right that we took an extra step to lobby the speaker. 1 hour to the debate to find a common ground.
As Buganda caucus.
That was Buganda caucus. No, actually, even Bugisu, members of Bugisu caucus were there, okay, in that meeting.
How many Banyachengezo were there?
Well,
okay, let's leave the...
Certain things are for the vigilant. Yeah, certain things are for the vigilant. Equity is for the what? For the vigilant. Yes. You're not going to tell me these people are sleeping. No, these are vigilant. You give it to them that they've woken up and put. For me, I find no problem with the, as long as what you are speaking about are national issues. It doesn't matter who speaks about these issues. Now, we took an extra step. And I will tell you later on a discovery, which answers our question. After making our case, which I've made here, the speaker said, you seem to have a point, but you need to, on this matter, if we are to move, you need the input of the president. Okay? Because he's the ultimate believer in this. So he put a call through and talked to the president and delivered our issues. The president, I mean, whether the president or the speaker felt the chair of what now, because I was like the head, should inform the president, should speak to the president and articulate the case. We did.
You did.
And by that time, 2 issues had remained. at critical level that even if our first priority is that UCDA should not be rationalized forever, make it efficient, leave it there as a special purpose vehicle. Then in case, that's what I say, in case you want to rationalize, okay, that's where now when the comparison with the president to come in. So don't dissolve, don't cause this anxiety in the market, don't do all these other things. Go and organize the Ministry of Agriculture. There will always be parliament, there will always be an executive. At the right time, when everything is set, okay, come and bring a bill to parliament to pass. Then the president, after, you know, I don't want to go to the other side, after hearing us, he said, if you have a point, speak to Bright, the Minister of Agriculture. When we talked to the Minister of Agriculture, actually, now we discovered that the way they want to manage this crop is through another authority called the National Food and Drug Authority, which is going to be set up in the ministry. Then the question was, why don't you first set up that infrastructure?
That's not correct, I will clarify.
No, you clarify. This I heard
That's
from
what
a cabinet minister, that later on, and it's before cabinet, this National Drug Authority,
National Food and Drug Authority,
where all other crops could be housed, okay, could be housed and given special attention. Then the question was, why don't you first put that infrastructure before you tinker with UCDA? Because there will not be this anxiety. Because the interest of my farmer is not in the name UCDA. Okay? The interest of the farmer is, one, to get better farm prices. Okay? How do we get better farm prices? Because we don't take coffee like Ethiopia. We grow coffee, market almost 95 of it. Okay? The coffee we grow is literally for sale. We offload it for sale. Now, the interest of the farmers is, how is it meant? Is that the market where we sell our coffee, it's of high standard, it's of high quality, and attracts the best prices. And let me inform you, our coffee is of a high quality that it is bought and mixed with other coffees to improve their quality. So it's like, it's so super coffee that they buy it and mix it, those other countries, and mix it to give it better quality. So it's a super ingredient, super coffee. So the interest in there is that how do we maintain that quality? Now, that quality, as you just said, you have to do it from the seedlings, nursery bed, to how you space and grow coffee in the garden, how you control pests and diseases, how you harvest the right coffee, how you dry it, how you process it, that's why UCDA has the accreditation, which is, and the world is now, he's a doctor. Because of the new, you call them non-communicable diseases. Because of the global, because now people no longer die of traditional diseases. It's more of them come from what they eat. So countries are so sensitive when they are importing food products. And they need that assurance and that accreditation. That's why you have the notion of accreditation. The argument I hear is government is accredited, but now they build trust in an institution within government and say when the professor says it's okay, it's okay. We can take it. Okay? Now, that accreditation today is with UCDA. It's not transferable automatically to Maïf.
It is.
No, it's not. That's where people are missing a point. It's not. It is. It is to UCDA. It has been watched, okay, put on the watch system. Then said, once you stamp, we see a stamp of Dr. Bariomos, okay, it is fine. Whereas you want to transfer that power to Omara, Omara will have to go through another process of verification and certification. Even if you want to go to Maïf, it's not an automatic switch. Okay? It's not a stamp of government of Uganda. Therefore, government of Uganda, the new agency, what if it's a ministry, it will have to be assessed, and that assessment, I'm not an expert, people say it will take 5 to 10 years. That's where Ethiopia got it wrong. That's where it collapsed. Now, we are also keeping a deaf ear, and all we hear is, it's religiously. Government is rationalizing. So we are saying, wait, for this crop, is a moral. You a Mulunzi. Let me call you a Mulunzi.
But I'm not a moral.
You a cattle keeper. You a cattle keeper. You a cattle
That's
keeper.
derogatory.
That's derogatory.
The cattle, I'm sorry, I apologize.
Like the way you say it. This information is derogatory.
The cattle keeper.
A proud
the
one
cattle
at that.
keeper know that a cow that gives you the best milk, in Uganda we say, is the one you first give.
And what?
You feed it first.
You feed it fast, feed it well. They know, the cattle keepers, that what makes a good herd is the quality of the bull. And they pay huge sums of money to buy a good cattle keeper can buy a bull for 15 million. If it will make even more, if it will make his herd better. Therefore, if now I'm speaking even the language the president understands better, if he's listening, if the bull of the Uganda's economy, the quality bull is coffee, please be willing to spend a little more on it. It will not hurt. So, and what is the economic value? Let me put figures to figure. Of 44 billion, which is the cost of running UCDA, where you have earned 1.4 billion US dollars. Where you have earned in Ugandan shillings 5 trillion. You spend, Omara is an economist, you spend 44 billion to earn 5 trillion. What economics would do say, this is small money, this is extravagance. So that's why if you want to read the best report I've seen, was the report of our culture committee. It actually made a case for let me put the word, for non-dissolution and banning of UCDA as of now. They made a good case. And I urge members of the majority party, and those of you who are going to Chisozi on a Friday, okay? Sometimes we only appeal to you that it's not too late to sit down as a country, no matter the tempo in the countryside. We are leaders, and find an amicable, agreeable position that is good for coffee. There is a whole lot to benefit. Okay. I was looking at a sub-county, Omara, a parish in my constituency. We grow coffee. They've given me a figure of a small parish, Emuruka, okay, that has earned in this financial year about 5-6 billion out of coffee sale. One parish. I will not give you other figures for security reasons because I can endanger. If I take it to Bukoma and Simbi, I've been brief because I'm now in touch with so many coffee growers. And it's these figures are easy to track. Because one coffee buyer from farmers in one area is normally 1 or 2 who buy coffee. You go to them, they'll give you the figures.
And we can assure you nothing will disrupt
No. Let me tell you what you don't know, and which I know. Also the fear, which is real. He was in parliament, by that time he was not on cabinet. We had a huge argument on clause 9 during the oil debate. Clause 9, you are not there yet. During clause 9, he knows it. It was on one notion, after making the oil law, who will have the power to give licenses to exploit oil. We had said a professional body. The president said, you cannot legislate me out of the oil sector. Therefore, he returned the bill so that power goes to the minister. And by extension, to the president. Because the president can easily instruct a minister. Now the big animal in the house. As we are speaking today, I'm now aware. She spoke about oligopoly or a monopoly. 4 agencies have already been given some exclusive right on our coffee. The Vinci coffee agreement, by the way, has never gone away. It is for a review, which contracted one farm to buy screen 18 and
screen
18 coffee exclusively, up to 2032. Then there is an agreement, and the better government tell us there is an agreement with this one of Ranchamaire is called Industrial Coffee Park. Let's look at the guarantees government has given it. There is another agreement which they have signed with the Chinese Communication Construction Company for export of our coffee. Now, the fear is that as you push coffee into a ministry, as it was on clause 9 on oil, okay? Don't you find easily, and when you look at the bill, section 5 of the bill, if anybody has it here, among the functions of what they are trying to, one of them is to do what? Not to age. There is another term they use technically, to be the one to allot of who sells our coffee. It's there in the bill, I've seen it.
Okay.
I've seen it in the bill. Therefore, the fears of the broader population. And I've told you, when you look at scheme of things, 75 billion of a course with infinite capability is a real deal. That's why a lot of people classified money through Rabog and others going in. These things in the minds of people is the Minister of Information. They real speak. People are aware of them. Those are real worries. And people need the assurances that what can they lay agreement on table, all those agreements they've signed and what they entail before we throw our coffee where an instruction will be followed religiously.
Thank you. Let me bring in Honorable Mara. And Honorable Mara, we normally tell the truth. Honorable Chivumbi raises contentious issues. Yeah. One, there is money that was given to Audrey Krabogo. There was also money given to Inspire Africa for a plant that is in Tungamo. But there's UCDA, this strategic crop. How does government alleviate these fears he has put here?
Yeah, thank you. But let me first say that some of the, if you listen to my brother and colleague, Mwana Chivumbi, I could see a lot of scaremongering, and also some of the arguments are flawed. UCDA is part of government. You can't say UCDA is bigger than the government of Uganda. In terms of certification, what they normally do are basically labs. You need to just check these labs, are they able to assess and provide high quality coffee and give the world assurance that what is coming out of Uganda is okay. So those labs are certified. It's not the individuals, but they might put an officer designated, maybe on terms of signing or endorsement, they will put an officer. That officer can sit in the Ministry of Agriculture. I just want to assess what is it that will be lost, and I will come to your point. If you look at key elements of coffee, number one is research, because you want to get disease-free coffee seedlings. You want to get high-quality seedlings. Who does it? It's a company or called NACORI, which is National Coffee Research Institute, based in Mukono, and it's part of NARO. So the research assurance, quality assurance, good seedlings are brought by a research agency called NACORI. If you look at production of seedlings in terms of multiplication, they are done by farmers. Farmers are the ones who go and prepare coffee beds. The only thing that UCD has is the scientists they have to go and basically handhold the farmers and say, this is how you need to do it. So the coffee seedlings, in terms of multiplication, preparing coffee beds, are done by farmers. If you come to the element of production, coffee farms are produced by the farmers, the Ugandan farmers outside there. I don't think UCDA has so many scientists that they will be in every farm. But apart from bringing people together, you educate them, they go back and do it in their farms. So production of coffee, which has accelerated over the years, have been done by government, by the farmers, by the people of Uganda. If you go again into terms of exports, who buy these coffees? Coffee seeds are private sector people who have been like Olam. There are very many now in Uganda. They're running all over the place. The moment they hear about coffee, everybody, private sector person is going there. So I am just petrified when people say without UCDA as an entity, that this country will collapse. The coffee sector will collapse. You mean they are going to uproot the coffee farms that we have at the moment, all those trees, coffee trees? Will it be uprooted? It would be. And I also should say I've been in the budget committee and I've been one of the proponents in the budget committee supporting more money for UCDA, because you'll actually see there was one time there was an arrears of about 96 billion shillings. Me and my brother here, I was the one who said, let us give money to pay those arrears. We put 30 billion shillings to go and pay the arrears. And we said the rest will be structured over the years so that we liquidate and pay those farmers. So I think one of the crises which is causing this stampede, there's a lot of money involved. I can now look back and say, how much money has government of Uganda invested in the coffee sector? It's government money that has been going there. Intentionally, because remember the president had a vision of having 20 million bags of coffee by a certain period of time. So government intentionally in putting money there, and the vehicle they were using was UCDA. I have never, for us who come from northern Uganda, we struggle to get money for compensation, cattle compensation. For us, Lango, Acholi, and Teso, do you know how much money we were given? 30 billion. It was even a struggle to even raise that 30 billion to cover the entire area. But you find UCDA, you have 85 billion, 96 billion, over 100 billion in a limited geographical area. So what I'm beginning to see is that the coffee plantations which have been put in place, it is now big. Now government is saying, okay, in terms of the future activities of seedlings, now we are put in place PDM, Parish Development Model. Let the farmers now use that money and buy their own seedlings. But you see, this baby has been given milk, given yogurt, given whatever. So this baby has been very well fed. Now they're saying, let's remove part of this money and give to the other sector. The baby now feels we need to keep this thing. So I see the big element of money, number one. Number two, the guys, the ministers have explained, there's been huge disparity in payments. So the salaries have been big. Going to government and having used something, 1.5, 2 million shillings, people are disinterested. So, but that brings into one big question. As a country, we must now go, and this commission that we're looking for salaries across public sector, we now need to make sure that the public sector is averagely remunerated well across the board, not just sectors, not agencies. And let me make this a particular point. Regulation, the question came on regulation. Regulation is around labs, around scientists making sure that they go and supervise and make sure the entire value chain comes into effect and that the quality is maintained. One of the activities of UCDA which was doing was basically marketing coffee abroad. That's why you find every trade shows abroad relating to coffee, it was being presented by UCDA. Promotion of coffee. Regulation, promotion of coffee, and increasing production. How would they increase production? We would give UCDA money. We would give UCDA money, like we would give UNRWA money. What would they do with that money? They go and then procure, tell the seed beds, farmers, we need maybe 2 million seedlings this year, as an example. They would be having government money. So they will go around preparing those seedlings, and then they will pay those farmers. That is basically doing a middleman job. So their scientific work as scientists will continue. Their regulation in terms of going outside there and making sure the farmers are doing the correct thing will continue. as Honorable Mangachifome is saying, if we feel this is a sector that we should continue to put more money beyond MYOGA, beyond PDM, then as government, the ministry will sit down, the president is there, will say, we need to put more money, as we were doing, but this time under the Ministry of Agriculture and being handled by the Permanent Secretary. So the only thing which is going to change is that people who are in charge of this basket now feel their powers are taken away. They're basically now small people in the ministry having no control over anything. So I would want to say it on this TV, that I don't think any government agency should ever feel so powerful. For us in the corporate sector, by the way, I've been in the banking world. Even when we are doing very well, we can decide to do a very drastic measure. And because the future of the organization is better than all of us. So if government feels this is now the time to rationalize and to making sure we provide an appropriate money in certain key sectors, we collapse this burgeoning government structure, we must do it. And no agency should feel that they are so strong they can mobilize against the government of Uganda. I think that is a very big mistake.
Okay.
Yeah.
Allow me to bring in Honorable Wilson. Honorable, what have you said? Leave the two gentlemen. You're close to the Ministry of Agriculture. The indictment on the Ministry of Agriculture, the incompetences that have been talked about, even as really as most recent. Let's talk about the foot and mouth disease that you are very relatable to, that we even had a quarantine. The management of that failed the Minister of Agriculture. What confidence do you give a coffee farmer,
thank you,
a coffee player, that Ministry of Agriculture will have the competencies to run just like UCDA did?
You know, what is baffling me is that people say Minister of Agriculture is incompetent and they are not doing anything about it. For me, first of all, I do not believe they are incompetent, because UCDA is part of the Ministry of Agriculture. It's the Minister of Agriculture who appoints Executive Director of UCDA. So why do you divorce the two? But if, for goodness sake, for argument's sake, it is incompetent, although I said, I put a disclaimer, why don't we demand that they deliver? Isn't that the best way to handle it? And
or they get fired. If
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. Let me say this, Timothy. Dr. Yamulemye came from Ministry of Agriculture to head UCDA. Yeah. He is going back to Ministry of Agriculture. What's the horrible about? The same engineers, the same scientists, the same professionals who have acquired that competence are not being rationalized. Research and development is not being rationalized. Nakori,
yes,
which is in Mukono, under Naro, they are not touching it. That is the mother of quality of coffee in Uganda. The professor who died and the former minister, remind me, who actually the president, because President Museveni told us that he found him in a laboratory, was even a member of parliament, and his son became a member of parliament.
It's a very interesting guy. I've forgotten the name.
It's called
Chibirige.
Dr. Chibirige Sebunya. Dr. Chibirige Sebunya, whom the president discovered in a laboratory. I think was one who Corona Coffee.
He would do the Corona
absolutely.
Coffee. Yes.
Was part of Naro. Naro, which heads research and therefore quality of coffee, is not being touched. There is basically nothing that UCDA has done to popularize that is being done away with. First, I want to correct this impression, my brother Mwanga Chivumbi. There is no killing at all. There is no decimation at all. There is even no dissolution, so to say. They are only, yes, they are only rationalizing. They are putting together services, common services, human resource, procurement, vehicle, and all that, that are done in the Ministry of Agriculture and done at UCDA.
And elimination of the board.
Absolutely, and the elimination of the board.
Yeah.
Putting them together, in doing that, you are making a saving. And professionals that have developed competence are not going to be lost. They are joining Ministry of Agriculture. In my view, let us give Ministry of Agriculture the best that there is, and let us demand from them the best that we deserve. Let me say this. Of course, I've already said, because people watching us now, what are they taking home? One.
Honorable Wilson.
Let me say, then
before you say that, Honorable Chivumbi mentioned something about Ethiopia and Kenya.
Yes.
And mentioned about the rationalization, especially Ethiopia 3 years later, dropped by 50%. When you put those
dynamics
two,
are different. Don't.
But it's a benchmarking.
65% of what Ethiopia produces is consumed locally. Ours, we don't even do that. I'm sorry to say, I have not seen a deliberate intervention by UCDA to promote drinking of coffee locally here.
They want you to make money.
Okay. And that's why from the beginning I said that the best for this debate, as a national debate, would have been to lift some notches higher by demanding, by saying, what is it that a coffee farmer from Kenshunga, from Chikati, from Sanga, is benefiting from selling a green bean? We should be demanding from government that coffee farmers in Uganda, in Butambara, should earn what the Germans are earning who are not growing any coffee. For me, that should be the gist of the debate, national, so to say. But UCDA or any other, if the president, and I said from the beginning, I still stand by that, any government, what's the name, given mandate to govern and rule and transform society, must come up with policies, programs, and if they find they are not working, you should review them. And in process of reviewing them, because eventually Ugandans are going to demand from government, what is it? Today, the debate should be about the price. And the price is controlled, and Honorable Mwanga Chibumbi correctly said, is controlled by the quality. And the quality is delivered by Nakori. Nakori is under narrow. And that component of research and development is not being rationalized.
Just a quick
So
one.
what's the fear about?
Quick comment so that I go to the minister.
Yeah, the 35 billion he talked about, that was given to the gentleman in Tungamo. I have seen the factory coming up, and it's actually added value to that, to coffee. And if it begins to sell that in a European market, the price will go, actually will go to $40 per kilo. From the $2.53 we are getting.
Is that under the Ministry of Agriculture?
It should be.
It should be, not necessarily be under the Ministry of Agriculture, but what the president said when we actually met in Kololo, the president said, I'm willing to have a discussion with the private sector who really wants to add value to this coffee.
But
so government can co-invest with us.
Before my senior colleague comes on board, because I know it arguments is even that is President Museveni's intervention to add value, to increase on the prices, and then for the benefit to the farmer.
But let me ask a simple question.
Yes.
As the minister comes in.
Yes.
I think you people, indirectly, you are making a very good case for UCDA. You are saying there is this one for seedling. You are saying there is narrow. You are saying there is what? You need a specialized hub dedicated for this crop. If it's so critical, your very arguments are the ones that make a good case. Because we are saying the capacities are scattered. Okay? You get it?
Hence,
one leg
hence
is here.
rationalization.
No.
Merging.
Not merging. Then there is this UCDA that has been gathering all these and make good use of them. You are saying, wait a minute, let me take you to to an agency
Back to
that
the
has...
ministry.
No. By the way, let me tell you. He talked about foot and mouth. If you learn, if I take you through the report of the drugs that were bought and not distributed, and they were burnt here.
Of drugs, you mean vaccines?
Vaccines. On the watch of this ministry. You didn't take the virus. Telling you.
Please allow me to conclude with the Honorable Minister. Honorable Mariam, I know you have a lot to respond to,
Yes.
but please add this too. Because the person watching us out there, a coffee farmer, a coffee player in this market, is looking for confidence from government. The indictment that Honorable Chivumbi has put on the Ministry of Agriculture, but also the strong statements he has made about another authority that is coming up. Those are the areas we need clarity.
Yes. Yeah, quickly, first of all, resistance to some of the proposals initiated by government is not new. Even when you check the Hansard, when UCDA was being created, there were those voices saying, why are you killing the Coffee Marketing Board? Why? Now I'm surprised. These very opposition voices are now praising UCDA.
Last year, I'm sorry, information.
Yes.
They resisted when UCDA withdrew from
The International Coffee Organization.
Absolutely.
Yes.
2 years ago.
So
2 years ago.
strangely, my brother Chivumbi, for the many years we've been together, and his team have been saying there is nothing working in the government. But this debate now, he sees is praising UCDA, and we just want to politely remind him that UCDA is a government institution. Check the Hansard when there was a debate on palm oil project, and even Namave, gazetting Namave as an industrial area. There were voices, opposition voices, especially from the Central Uganda. Yes, that you are destroying the environment in Uganda. But now, you go to Namave and see the industrial parks, the industries. You go to Kalangar and see the palm oil project, how it is thriving. The voices are very positive. So it is not new. Now, let me disabuse Honorable Chivumbi of the issue of misinformation and opinion. Misinformation means false or inaccurate information, especially that which is deliberately intended to deceive. When you speak in the camera here and say, you have no right to kill your child, you are distorting the proposal from government. There is no issue of killing here, as we have explained. We are saying UCDA, in effect, is not being abolished. But we are taking it to the ministry, the technocrats, those researchers, those doctorate holders, the Dr. Yamulemyes are not being retrenched. They will still be there. So the fear of the stakeholders, who will do quality, who will do what, that will not change. The farmer in Butambara who is fetching good money from coffee
will continue.
This will not disrupt him. Actually, our intention is that if we save more money from these administrative units, then we shall pry it back into the coffee subsector so that that farmer should even be able to get more money. The challenge you should put to us is to assure the country that once Dr. Yamilenya and the team of UCDA go to the ministry, the standards will remain. And that's the assurance we are giving. So there is a distortion and the misinformation going out there, scaring the farmers that you saw what my friend, the Wachitiwa Katikiro, was saying. You touch coffee, you have touched people of Uganda. Who is touching coffee? Nobody is touching coffee. We are only touching UCDA by way of rearranging where they sit. But their function, their mandate, their supervisory role, their monitoring, assuring standards and quality, that remains, that is not being changed. So the stakeholders, the exporters, the farmers, all these, there is nothing being distorted. And my colleague here has explained, it is not true that when you change from UCDA, the ministry, then accreditation will take 5 or 10 years. No. The accreditation process works with the domestic infrastructure.
Yes.
Like he has said correctly, largely, do you have the quality laboratory to do this?
Yes.
Do we have a designated focal person?
Yes.
And all these are not changing. Are we saying that if you shift UCDA, then you're going to destroy the laboratory? No.
at all.
So it is not true that that now accreditation will not be done, and therefore we can't export the coffee and so forth. Now, the assertion that the UCDA is going to be taken over by a new authority, I want to believe the minister didn't say that, because the National Food and Drug Authority that is being proposed is the equivalent, because we have the National Drug Authority which tests drugs, for especially the human and veterinary drugs.
Yes.
There has been a debate through a bill in cabinet that we separate veterinary drugs and also issues of plant health and have a standalone agency, different from the human drugs. Because when we import drugs from outside, NDA checks the efficacy and the quality of the drugs.
Yeah.
So that agency will be to check the veterinary medicines and pharmaceutical supplies and plant health related issues, not the work of UCDA. So I just wanted to clarify that. What we did as ministries is that cabinet required us to sit and look at the organogram of our ministries and create departments and units to accommodate these agencies which are coming. Like in my Ministry of ICT, we have sat and created additional departments to accommodate NITA-U, so that the team which is in NITA-U, the ICT officer, the engineers are not going away. They will come and fit into the ministry and continue doing the work they have been doing there. The same, the technical team that we are proud of, that sit in UCDA will now be housed in a department at agriculture and continue to do the same work that they have been doing. So those fears, and that's where we have a problem with the likes of the Honorable Chivumbi. When they get out there in Butambara, they don't give you this information. They say it in their own way to confuse our people out there. But of course the challenge we have had in this process is that the agencies do not want to be rationalized. So there is resistance. And there has been a strange behavior in Parliament, which we are going to act on. We got a situation where a minister comes and appears before a committee, you make a case for cabinet, then the committee invites an agency to come and contradict the minister. And we are going to punish some of them. It is the ministers who are answerable to Parliament. And I also know for a fact that some of them have even been trying to compromise members of Parliament to make a case for them. Let me come to the issue of the Vinci coffee agreement, the Ntungamo factory, the Chinese export, Mr. Guabugogo, and so forth. Now, that is the vulgarization of the whole debate that is being occasioned by some of our friends. The government has been very insistent that we have a raw deal exporting raw materials, whether it's coffee, whether it's minerals, or whatever you talk of. And the president has been very clear that the answer to the challenges of poverty and employment and many other issues is to add value to our own products here. So, like the issue of the Vinci coffee, okay, there may have been issues with the person of Madame Pinetti, but the idea of building domestic capacity to add value to our coffee still remains. So I agree with the Honorable Chivumbi that that idea of building our own capacity as a country to add value to the coffee instead of exporting raw beans to process the coffee here, so that one, it can fetch a higher price, but two, when you put the factories, they employ our people, and definitely the farmers and all of us benefit more from the coffee than the way we are gaining now. And we have no apologies for that, and we shall continue to pursue that line to add value. So when the government came in to strategically support a private sector actor in Ntungamo to put up a factory, that's good, because that's value addition. And now the vulgarization is going on in Central here, that you see, you Baganda, President Museveni is asking you to take all your coffee to Ntungamo. You bring those tribal sentiments. Yes. These are what the MPs say in their constitution, which is not true. Factories should be supported in all parts of the country.
Those
in the north,
were said by the director.
This is what is out there.
But
just
those
hold
words
on.
were said
You may
by
not
the
be the one
director.
saying it.
He said, "Obumwanyu gwetu, Gwaganda gwetu, Gona."
That was some local leader. I think he was excited, saying, "Oh, coffee will be coming here to Ntungamo." But have
So
you
why
heard?
do you attribute it to
No.
Uganda MPs?
There is nothing wrong with the factory being set up in Ntungamo, because Ntungamo is part of Uganda. More factories should be set up in Uganda. More factories should be set up in the north, in the east, everywhere, so that we can process this coffee here. The issue of Chinese export, yes, we were in China recently with the vice president and other ministers, and we signed with a company in China to help us market coffee and also export coffee to the Chinese market, because Chinese are 1.4 billion people. So entering that market of China for us to export the coffee, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. Don't really present it as
And
if
it's good for
negative
Ugandan
thing.
farmer.
Okay.
The Honorable Gwabogo,
Yes.
the Mr. Gwabogo, yes. I need to clarify this, but because you see, I've seen MP saying, President Museveni is taking your coffee, you farmers. You see, that kind of false narrative. Mr. Gwabogo heads the committee on presidential advice on exports, and he has been very active in getting markets for coffee in Europe and other countries, and he's very active in that endeavor. And he's a Ugandan like all of us. So it should not be verified because he's making a contribution. So this issue of saying, President Museveni is taking your coffee, government is taking your coffee, are you saying President Museveni or us in the government are going to go and uproot the coffee in the whole country? And we must be responsible as leaders. That's why we are talking of misinformation. Present the information the way we have presented it. Do not falsify it just to your advantage, simply because maybe you want to,
Can I ask you, Honorable
to get
Minister?
votes from the coffee farmers and so forth.
Can I ask you?
Yes.
We have a similar arrangement for fish. We have a similar arrangement for tea, for cotton, for vanilla, for sugar cane. Now, can you assure the citizens from what, and those are within the Ministry of Agriculture, by the way, directly, what has happened to fish, what has happened to sugar cane, the farmers are that poor, while those that trade in sugar cane have airfields.
And Honorable Minister, just to add to what Honorable Chivumbi has said, you have spoken about Mr. Rabogo.
When others have
we have free zones, we have export promotions. Why not go through that?
Yeah, but his committee works with them. It works with the Ministry of Trade, the Export Promotion Council, those free zones.
So why don't you rationalize that?
No, some of them are being rationalized.
Please conclude, Honorable Minister.
I know there are a section of opposition MPs who have pathological fear of the president or pathological hatred of the president and his family. That is also not a hidden issue. But we want to tell Ugandans that we have taken a policy of rationalization, and it is in good faith for betterment of service delivery in this country. This verification of Ministry of Agriculture, when you say UCDA is doing very well, we have surplus sugar, which we now export, and sugar comes from sugarcane, which is a crop. We have surplus milk, which we export. Milk comes from cows. And
Surplus maize.
Surplus maize, which is a crop. And you know cows, the ministry is agriculture, animal husbandry, and fisheries. So you are talking as if UCDA, NALO, NAGRIC, as if they are NGOs. All these are part of the Ministry of Agriculture.
Okay.
Agriculture, and they are doing their best. So, Honorable Chivumbi is saying, the Ministry of Agriculture has been found wanting. It should be improved rather than giving it additional task. for clarity, we are not saying UCDA go home and what you have been doing will be taken on by the existing officers in agriculture only. No, we are saying UCDA, leave Ginger Road. They can still remain here, the officers, but leave figuratively, leave Ginger Road, sit in a table in the ministry. That's what we are saying.
Okay,
so
in the law.
we are not necessarily chasing
Have you
UCDA
read
away.
section 3, 3 and 5?
Just hold on. Just
Lastly,
hold on.
Honorable Minister.
Let me clarify. We are not saying that you technical people go home and then
No killing, no dissolution.
so
there's
no dissolution, no
dissolution.
killing.
Yes.
We are just changing that they live where they are, UCDA. Now they will be sitting
At,
new space.
and the public should not lose
work
confidence in you by saying no dissolution.
Okay.
So the value chain, the whole value chain, the partners and stakeholders, the whole arrangement will not be distorted by this decision to take UCDA into the ministry. So there should be no cause for fear. There's no need to fear.
Okay. Let me read some feedback quick so that we can close. James in Ginger, why did government forget other cash crops like cotton, tobacco, and expense itself on coffee? Revive the cash crops. Okay. Thank you very much. I strongly support rationalization except UCDA for strategic nature and principles of practice. Nevertheless, I want to see this happen. 2 billion earning from oil is the net earning of the treasury, but if compared to coffee, whose net treasury might be less than 200 million. Point of correction. Okay. This is Stefan. Thank you very much. The last three here. Timothy, tell Dr. Chris that Maif is a non-starter because Teso and the few people who first had their fruits and were doing well when they were organized themselves, selling their seasonal fruits, government brought a company that now does not work. NADS claimed the supply seeds, but the people say the seeds are not working. The fruit factory failed to buy the fruits, instead started importing them from Kenya. Okay? Please inform Honorable Chivumbi, Ethiopia earns $1.4 billion from 298,000 tons of coffee exported. They consume about 70% of their production.
Yeah,
is that failure, as he alleged? We're talking about the part where the coffee was rationalized.
If Ethiopia had not been consuming their coffee locally, with what they gambled, they would have suffered adversely.
Okay.
They were cushioned because they were consuming
This is
their
Charles.
coffee.
He says, talking in a manner of tantamounting to blackmail, witch hunting, dilutes the purpose of the debate. No member on the panel said an agency is bigger than the Ministry of Agriculture. If UDCA is going to be an excellent marketer, it isn't the tourism ministry that has been blamed for not doing well. Tanzania and Kenya separated nearly double their tourism because of poor marketing. Okay. Finally, coffee is a national issue. It's not a partisan issue. Okay. Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Honorable Mwanga Chivumbi. Thank you, Honorable Mara. Honorable Kajwenje, thank you very much. Honorable Minister, thank you very much. We'll end it this way. First, I want to thank the technical team for making sure today has gone well. And we'll end it with this. A cat that dreams of becoming a lion must stop or lose its appetite for rats. Good morning.